of victory and the agony of defeat.
Madison, great ball around the corner, Penasini, he beats them all! Junior Polar out wide, bumped away from Trindle, Sharks coming through, none of them can hold him!
Hello and welcome to another live edition of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as Forty20, and joining me in the calm before the storm, because there is a lot of football happening in the next couple of weeks, are my good mates, Sixties and Chris Ricketts. Fellas, a pleasure to have you on the show as always. And before we start talking shop and start talking turkey, how you both doing as we have our Origin and a triple header, back-to-back weeks of arch rivals coming up for the Parramatta Eels?
Mate, you always got to love weeks when it's arch rivals. Origin, well, we're going to talk a little bit about that as far as it impacts Parramatta and as far as selections are concerned. And I know Chris has some strong opinions about that, but I'm just adjusting to the sudden snap of cold weather. Like last week, it was going to Eels training and actually it was really warm. You know, it was like shorts and t-shirt weather. This week, my goodness, it's almost an Arctic blast. Maybe not quite, but in comparison to what it's been lately with the extended summer almost that we've had, it's a bit hard to get used to. I think it might be cold on Friday night down at CommBank Stadium. Might be one to rug up for. So how you doing, Chris? Where are you coming in from this week?
I'm in Salzburg for another 6 weeks, and firstly, I'll just say, you know, I've missed you guys. It's been a few weeks, and you know, the mighty blue and gold won last week when I wasn't there, so maybe this is a bad omen for me to jump on, but.
Yeah, piss off. Just piss off.
I already kicked him out of the Discord call once and told him to come back in in the green room. But yes, if you're into those sort of sporting omens and all those superstitions, and certainly if you've got your set of game underwear that you always wear or your socks or uniform combinations. But as much as we like to think we have that cosmic influence on the game, unfortunately, I think it's more coincidence than anything else, isn't it, fellas?
I think so.
Yeah.
And Sixties always says he doesn't wear any underwear on game day. So
I've heard.
Is it football or free ball? I don't know.
Exactly.
Fellas, look, before we start to change the rating on this show too much, we better take care of a bit of business. So no matter what platform you're watching this on, if you could give it a like and subscribe, if you can throw in a comment as well, that would be brilliant. We will be acknowledging all of our live viewers there shortly. Also, a shout out to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. And of course, Parramatta Leagues Club, the home of the Eels. Now, I did want to mention something that I've just seen come up for the Eels. Now, we're actually there this Friday. We'll be doing our live show at 5:30 p.m. Special guest Stephen Edge. So that promises to be a great one. Edgy's anecdotes and his analysis of the game, and you know, he's just a really entertaining bloke to listen to. So make sure you get there in Sturlos in Parramatta Leagues Club. Come and say g'day to us. Come and say g'day to Edgy. He then has to head over to the game, probably about 6:15, something like that. So we've got him just for that brief period of time in the Leagues Club. But I do want to mention as well that coming up in the club on the weekend where we play the Panthers, the club has a special away event. So we play the Panthers as the visiting team at CommBank Stadium. And there's a fantastic event that's going to happen. That's Sunday, the 1st of June. It's in our home in Parramatta Leagues Club in Sturlos. And it's actually going to be a function or an event that's going to be hosted by, wait for it, fellas, Jim Sarantinos, the CEO of the Eels, and he's going to be interviewing some Eels legends there. The event goes from 1:30 to 3:30 pre-game. It's $30 a head, so you get food and prizes with that. And also, just a reminder, the game kicks off at Combank Stadium that day at 4:05. So the timing's great. Make sure you get your tickets. You do have to book for that. It's not going to be a matter of rolling up to it. I would imagine tickets will go fast. We'll no doubt be there just to partake in the event and to listen to not only our CEO, Jim Sarantinos, but also some Eels legends. So check that out. Go to the Paraleague site at the moment, and they've got the details on that. So just wanted to mention that. Also, on the long weekend, on the Monday, there's a function for the Eels Foundation and charities that John and I will be part of. The Talking Para blokes will be hosting it in the bowling alley, so you can come along and be part of that bit of fun in the bowling alley there in Kicks in Parramatta Leagues Club. And we'll actually be doing a live podcast, John and I, as part of that function. And finally, I should also mention that when it comes to the Eels Foundation, there's a big function that's going on. It's a long lunch. It's called the Long Lunch, a Legends Long Lunch. So if you head to the Eels there, it's all to raise money for the Eels Foundation. They've got, and I'm just going to read through who's going to be part of it so that I don't miss anyone. It will be Peter Sterling, Nathan Hindmarsh, Steve Ella, Peter Wynn, Nathan Kalis, plus also Jason Ryles, assistant coach Nathan Brown, and the general manager of football, Mark O'Neill. So you'll be able to hear them talk about what's happening at Parramatta, some stories, some anecdotes as well. It's all part of it's going to be at, I believe, at Rosehill Racecourse. So get in touch with the Eels for that one. Tickets, of course, will go fast, but it's also for a great cause, the Eels Foundation. So that's a little bit of a longer intro, fellas, than we normally do, but it was important to get through some of those functions and events that are coming up, because as John said, it's a big month of football ahead of us, and it's also a big month of events as well. So, fellas, without further ado, let's get on with the news.
All right.
News team, assemble!
Now, just as we head into the Eels news, John, who have you got there in our live viewers at the moment?
Yeah, plenty of regulars. Jaden Walters was first in, saying hello to Gents and Gentettes. Very polite there. Well done, Jaden. Mike Fleet also in early. Kicks, Sushant Shingari. And then we've got a great name there, one of the iconic characters of one of my favourite shows and played by the late Bob Einstein. But good to see Marty Funkhauser alive and very well in chat. We've got Scott Whitney, Sinkers, Ben Johnson is representing the Pack Gallery. Present, well done, mate. It's Chris Fairburn, Scott Whitney, a lot of regulars there. Joel, good to see Joel in there. He asked a lot of good football questions. Dave, Fletcher Johnson. So a lot of regulars, a couple of new names there too, or at least names I don't recognise off the top of my head. But a lot of returning faces, and we do appreciate everyone jumping in on a Tuesday night for the hot press of Team List Tuesday in the NRL.
Yeah, and just before we hit the team list, John, we do have to start off with a bit of sad news that Greg Heddles, who was Eels player number 365, passed away a couple of days ago. Greg was a player with the Eels in the late 70s. He got his debut late in the season in 78, had a couple of big appearances in the finals football off the bench. In one memorable game, scored a try-double, and one of those was, you have to remember, a rookie off the bench throws the dummy, which the Canterbury team fell for, and scores the crucial try in that game. It's one that sticks in my memory from back then. And as I said, unfortunately, he's passed away, and we do send our condolences and sympathies to Greg's family, friends, loved ones. And it's always too soon when it's a young player you can remember from your own lifetime that passes away. So, as I said, sending all of our thoughts to Greg's family. John, Chris, any surprises this week that we had both Moses and Lomax named in the Origin team? We knew, we told everyone that Moses would be selected at 5'8". We'd got the inside word on that through some sources that it was done. He was in the team, and I guess the only question is really Lomax. Chris, what's your thoughts on the selection of Lomax after one game back from injury?
I think when he walked in last week, he looked like he hadn't missed a beat. Even though he'd been injured for about 6 or 7 weeks. He came straight in, made a couple of 100 meters scored a couple of tries. I mean, based on that and the way he got through the game for all 80 minutes, I think Laurie was probably pretty keen to pick him. And I think, with Kiraz getting injured as well, I think that probably made it a bit difficult. That was probably the alternative there. So as a New South Wales fan, very glad that Lomax made the side. As a Parramatta fan, maybe mixed feelings, I would say.
Yeah, John?
But deserved it.
Yeah, like you said, Sixties, you had the inside running on Mitchell Moses being the partner to Nathan Cleary, although the media had a lot of fun speculating whether Moses would be there at all. Lou or not, but you obviously had the good word there. And with Lomax, yeah, he was the one that had the tougher gig to sell to a new coach in Laurie Daly. If Michael Maguire had been there, I think he walks in, no doubt, even with the injury. But, you had a lot of interesting names being thrown up into that back line. It probably helped that someone like Jacob Kiraz got hurt, which we'll speak about in the second half of the podcast, a part of that injury report from the NRL. But on top of what you said there, Ricketts, what more could he do to sell himself to Laurie Daly against Newcastle Knights? 270 metres, 2 tries, a stack of work, some great defensive play as well. Did everything he could possibly do. And, yeah, unfortunately for the Parramatta Eels, he's out, which obviously means we're going to have a weaker back line, but he deserves a call-up. He was fantastic. Yeah,
before his injury, he was getting to that point where he was the Eels' best on field in matches, whether it was at the centre or on the wing. And he's come back, and as you said, Chris, he's just picked up where he left off. John thought he was best on field against the Knights. I was a little bit harsh. I think I gave him 1 point, I think, from memory, John. You gave him the 3 points.
Yep. Tough critic, mate. Tough critic.
I'm a hard marker, mate. I'm a hard marker. So New South Wales' gain is unfortunately Parramatta's loss in this one, but we'll talk a little bit more about the rest of the Origin selections when we come to the NRL news segment. But John, I'll throw it to you for Team List Tuesday news.
Yeah, it was a lot of, not drama or controversy, but there was some intrigue about this Team List Tuesday, boys, because earlier in the day, Adrian Prashenko from the Sydney Morning Herald, who we know has his ear to the ground when it comes to the Parramatta Eels, sort of teased that Joash Papawi might be making his debut this week, but Joash named as 18th man. There's the big spoiler there for Joash, and not to say he's not going to make his debut, but we'll talk about the mechanics behind a potential debut shortly, because the team does have some enforced changes. We mentioned Mitchell Moses and Zach Lomax in Origin. There's also a player coming back from suspension in Kelma Tuolangi. So the team shakes out like this. At fullback, Isaiah Yongi. Sean Russell kicks out from the centres to the right wing, where he'll partner Will Penasini down that side, with Jordan Samrani moving from the bench back into the centres, where he'll work with Josh Adokar down the left, or at least I presume 60s. That's how they'll configure. I know Will did play left earlier in the season, but right is his preferred side. In the halves, Dylan Brown will partner Dean Hawkins. Obviously, the more senior of the two options there between Volkman and Hawkins, and Dean will get that gig. Jack Williams looks like he defaults back to the front row to partner Junior Barlow after starring on the right edge last week. Riley Smith, there was concerns about his fitness. I think there was a calf strain or a calf knock, 60s, that people sort of identified late in that game against Newcastle. He looks to be okay and has passed fitness tests, or will pass fitness tests, I expect. Kelma Tuolungi coming back into that starting back row. He'll work down the right edge, I assume, with Gideon Katonga playing down his preferred left. Jermaine Hopgood is the starting lock forward. On the interchange is Dylan Walker and Luca Moretti, two of the mainstays for Jason Ryles in his first year of his tenure. Ryan Madison gets his, presumably he's going to be playing his first back-to-back games of the season in the NRL, alongside Matt Dury also coming back into the squad. Joash Papali is the 18th man. And like I said, Adrian Prashenko, who is a pretty good media source when it comes to the Eels, did say that there's a chance he'll debut, or seemed to think he would debut. But alongside that, on the extended roster, you've got Joey Lussick, Tony Mattielli, Ronald Volkman, and Sam Loizu. Interesting inclusion there, given that there was some other more senior and top 30 players available. But I don't know if that's a reward for what he's doing behind the scenes, 60s. But Sam getting a nod on Teamless Tuesday. I don't know where you want to start, boys, because we've obviously got the backline reshuffle with Sam Rana coming in and Russell kicking out to the wing. You've got the halves selection of Dean Hawkins, and then you've got Kelma Tuolungi coming back into that starting roster. And, of course, the rumour, the intrigue, the headline grabber this week was, will Jason Ryles debut his fifth deal? Is that right? It is his fifth, right? Yeah. Riley, Tuivasa, Semrani, and then obviously Tony Mattielli last week. So this will be number 5, a full hand. And to start using the other hand soon.
Yeah, I think, I can't say too much on what's happening, given that I attend training. But I will share.
I know chat might jump in and read too much into that. That's not a tacit agreement or disagreement. Craig has always been pretty staunch about not giving away secrets. So I can probably speak for you, 60s, in that regard, where you haven't shared anything with me. I've watched a lot of Joash this year. I think that he's been close to a debut for quite some time. But on the flip side, Jason Ryles has something of a working formula in the last month. He's sort of cracked. I know we've only had 2 wins in the 4 games, but we've been high competitive with the Sharks, barring the officiating influence, and then we should have beaten the Dolphins. So you got a guy that's been kicking down the door versus a team that's starting to figure itself out a little bit. I think there's arguments either way here. And I wouldn't be surprised if Joash is making his debut. But by the same token, if the coach ends up going with the named roster, I wouldn't be shocked either.
So I was just going to share a quick anecdote from training on Monday. There was a selection that wasn't terribly evident, and I was curious just to know for my own benefit what the plan was. So I asked one of the coaches who was likely to be selected in a particular position, and it was actually in the wing position, to be honest. And the reply came back, I don't know. Well, actually, I do know. I'm just not going to tell you. So that was, that was interesting. It just wasn't evident in the training. So, I took the punt on asking the question. I got the answer that I expected with the laughter that came with it. Anyway, look, just on the rumour. Look, we know Adrian Prashenko's. He loves Parramatta. He's a Parramatta man. Although he's pretty good at being, I guess you'd say, unbiased in his columns and what he writes.
How come all the Parramatta media identities are incredibly unbiased? Peter Sterling, Adrian Prashenko. Where's our one-eyed fans in the media? Come on, guys, you've got to work a bit harder.
Oh, look, I guess Adam Hawes is unabashedly an Eels supporter, and he's not afraid to express his feelings on social media about how the Eels are going. So we've got to give Adam props there, as well as a journo media commentator in that regard. So, but yeah, look, he's obviously got his ear to the ground, and that's what he's picked up. As I said, I don't know I can't say what it's going to be, but as you said, we've speculated that Joash would be getting close because of the number of times that he'd been 18th man. We speculated that early on, Riley Smith, perhaps took that place when he was coming off the bench at the start of the year. And then when Riley started the games, we pick up Dylan Walker. And Dylan's basically playing the role that we expected Joash would. And I guess they've been looking for a way in which to include Joash. How they include him this week, if that's the case, will be intriguing, because we're expecting Riley to play this week and we're expecting Dylan Walker to play this week. So where does he fit in? I guess we wait and see. Chris, what's your thought on that rumoured start for Joash?
It's pretty safe to say that I'm not witnessing a lot of trainings from where I live. So I think it's you can put this one down as being just my personal perspective. I look at this.
However, you have seen more training than the average Parramatta fan, even though you live in another country. So
as soon as I get home, I take every opportunity to immerse myself in it. But if I look at this squad this week and I look at the back line, like Moses and Lomax are huge outs for us. And you compare it to Manly, and we've always talked about the fact that Manly's back line is probably the fastest, most dynamic in the competition. Samrani has been fantastic. I think Ryles has absolutely got him nailed on, though, in terms of what his role should be. I think he's filling that space as kind of the backup edge, back row, or impact player off the bench, doing a good job there. And he offers obviously coverage in the back if you get stuck during the game. He's not the fastest back in the competition. And if I look at this, it lines up with Turbo, Saab, Kula, Garrick, Lehigh, Hopewadi. I mean, that back five for Manly is just so fast. I wouldn't be upset to see Joash as a late in to just add a bit of pace there, and then you put Samrani back to the bench potentially, and someone drops off. Might be Dury again or Maddo, but that's how I'd like to see him line up. Maybe as a horses for courses policy against this specific Manly team with the pace they have out wide.
Yeah, John, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, look, if Joash is to come into the team, it'll be interesting to see how he's deployed, because he is a specialist fullback. I think he has got positional versatility. We've spoken about it in the past. I know that Phil Gould, or at least some of the Canterbury camp, are of the opinion he could cover dummy half. And I have seen him in the halves, both this year for Parramatta and in the New South Wales Cup for the Bulldogs. So he's certainly got some spinal versatility there. I look at I know people be concerned about his size, and that is a legitimate matchup concern with most of the towering wings that are in this game. But I've mentioned it this year. Tane Tuapicki's doing a great job for the New Zealand Warriors. He's of a similar stature, maybe a little bit taller than Joash, but not significantly. And he's holding his own down on the wing, and he's been in the fullback too when the opportunity's presented itself for the Warriors. So, yeah, look, if he has to play in the back line, I think there's definitely precedent based on what we're seeing in the NRL. If he has to play utility, that's where it gets really interesting, because that might be his best path into a long-term gig in the Parramatta Eels this year at least. And how do you shake up the team around that 60s? And I know you can't reveal too much. And there's a question in the chat about that we'll talk about in terms of people tipping the debuts and positional changes and what's our stance on it, which I'll let you speak about that shortly. But yeah, if he can certainly figure himself into that utility role, it's a very, very interesting outlook for both him and the team.
Yeah. Of course, the other position really is, what our bench looks like this week, because we had Matt Dury drop out of the team last week, played New South Wales Cup. He's been brought back into the interchange this week. Tony Mataielli drops back to New South Wales Cup. You and I were talking about that earlier this afternoon, John, where I said in my mind it was like last week was an ideal week to debut Tony, to give him that taste of first grade. And I don't see him going back to New South Wales Cup as being a demotion, but rather, just he's had that taste, drop back now, maybe work on a couple of things before he's brought back in again. And you'd have to say in retrospect, the game against Newcastle was the ideal game for him to debut in, not only because of, how the game was likely to play out, but also the fact that he had that little bit of history at the night. So it maybe added a little bit of hunger to his performance as well. Chris, how do you see that change on the bench?
Thinking about the way we're talking about the bench here, I mean, there's been a bit of discussion in the chat. I wouldn't mind seeing Dylan Walker, given the playmaking reduction with Moses out, having Dylan Walker start at 13, and then that gives you opportunity to play around on your bench as well. And that would be, I think, Jono, maybe that's what you're alluding to potentially. That allows you to bring Joash in as your bench utility, and then you play your 3 other forwards on the bench. I think we've seen every week since Dylan Walker's joined the club, when he comes on, he really straightens up the attack and offers a lot more variety for the team. So we've seen Dillbag, specifically Dylan Brown. He when he's asked to lead the attack, maybe we just look a little bit predictable. Dean Hawkins is not Mitchell Moses. He's a competent replacement, but very few players are. So it's not a knock on Footy Dean. But I wouldn't mind seeing Dylan Walker in there just to offer a bit more variety in attack, and then you can play around with your bench, and maybe it's Joash.
Fellas, at the start of this week, I wrote a post about where the Eels seem to be at right now. One of the things that I focused on was the inexperience, basically, in the team. And just for anyone that hasn't read through the post, this is what we're looking at. And I'm going to mention those debuts, John, that you spoke about before. So Iongi's played 11 games of first grade. Riley Smith, 10 games, and that's a 25 debut. Charlie Geimer, 8 games. Gideon Katonga, 12 games. Jordan Samrani, another debut this season, 5 games. Sam Tuivasa, a debut, 7 games. Tony Mattielli, 25 debut, 1 game. Ronald Volkman, 7 games. Dan Keir, 7 games. Jake Tungor, 8 games. Dean Hawkins, 18 games. And we talk about, Dean Hawkins as being a bit of a seasoned player, but it's only 18 games of NRL that he's played, even though that might be spread out over a few years. And then if we're talking about bringing in Joash, there's another debutant, there's another inexperienced player. Now, for the Eels, being competitive with that level of inexperience within the team, I think it actually does augur quite well for the future. Now, it also says when you start to dig a bit deeper, when you've got further in the depth chart, this level of experience, Arthur Miller-Stephen, who's now out for the season, 1 game. Hayes Dunster is only 19 games. And we haven't seen Hayes again for a few weeks. Wiramu Greg Woody, 26 games. Luca Moretti, 27 games. Joey Lussick, 36 games. Again, you're thinking, well, there's a player maybe towards the latter part of his career, but only 36 NRL games. Matt Dury, 37. Brendan Hands, 40. So, and then when you're talking about the experienced players, put it in inverted commas, Sean Russell just played his 50th. Jermaine Hopgood's 55 games, and Kelma Tuolungi is 62. Like, there's not a huge amount of experience. And when you're talking about the experience, the Eels are going to let go, or look like letting go, of experience. We know that Dylan's moving on, and you've got the question marks now that are over Sean Lane, Bryce Cartwright, and Ryan Madison. So it's an interesting spot that the Eels are in right now. And Jason Ryles has made the decision, when there's been opportunities there, to blood a younger player rather than to bring in one of the more experienced players. So, interesting time moving ahead. John, out of the other lower grade teams, any surprises at all? Are you able to give us a bit of an overview of what's happening with the New South Wales Cup and Jersey Flegg?
Yeah, look, Cup's pretty straightforward, fellas. Joash has been named to start at fullback, but the big twist here, I suppose, is that Arpa Twiddle is in the bench. I've got him, actually, I've just checked my Team West post. I've got the wrong jersey number on him. I think he's 16 rather than 17. But Arpa Twiddle, who is traditionally a fullback that can also cover the other spine positions in the front line, is there as cover should anything happen. But Charlie Guyman moves from the edge back into lock because Dan Keir, unfortunately, has picked up a hamstring injury, 60s. He just came back from a quadriceps injuries, and he's now out till round 18, I believe. Round 18, the club is saying. So really bad luck there for Dan, but it gives Charlie a chance to start in the middle. That opens the way for Will Latu back into the starting team. Likewise, Tony Mattelli comes into that grade to start in the front row alongside Wiramu Greg. Matthew Hunter caught up from the flag to partner Ronald Volkman. Otherwise, the back line is Tungal Namva, Penasini, and Louisu, which we've come to sort of see settle in recent weeks. The other interesting swap here is between the dummy halves. Joey Lussick getting a start over Brendan Hands this week. And that is probably the sort of nuts and bolts of the cup team there, boys, unless I'm missing something obvious. And then in the flag, we had I don't think the team's actually been officially named by the Parramatta Eels. I've cobbled together a team from some of the other outlets. But we get Bradley Avery back this week. He goes in at fullback. The back line then reads Avery, Alamadine, Balu, Shears, and Kakoi, which is pretty similar to what we saw last week with Avery coming in for upper title. Lorenzo Talatona bumped up the start at 5'8" this week. He'll partner Josh Lynn. Lorenzo doing a great job at dummy half last week, an unfamiliar role for him, fellas, but back into his preferred number 6. I believe Damascus Nemia is back this week. That's a big boost in the front row. He'll partner Torres Lakini. Patrick Spence getting a start over Jack Hudson, but the back row is the Stratus of the Dominic variety, Will Lewis and Saxon Pryke, which again is very familiar. And then you've got 3 SG ball players or graduates on that bench alongside Jack Hudson with Tom Summer, Josiah Funarayuta, and Isaac Jim getting the nod this week. And I believe that Elijah Shane Tapa'u is the 18th man. So plenty of those SG ball graduates already making an influence on this team, boys, just weeks after that grand final.
Yes. Look, not necessarily any surprises in those grades. Fellas, there was one thing I neglected to ask you about, and that is this week we've again got Jack Williams named as a middle. Will he start on an edge? And will, therefore, if that's the case, will 40's title for team list come true? With he's named the team list Tuesday Original Prankster. Is Jason Ryles got a whole lot of pranks that he's going to pull?
There's a chance for some roosters this week, isn't there? Yeah.
Yeah, like he got something up his sleeves. Is it possible, Chris, for Jack Williams to go back to a middle role after being so dynamic on the edge last week?
It's a great question. Once we saw what he had, I mean, Ryles has clearly wanted to go smaller and faster. We've seen that from the start of the year. And Williams in the middle fits that bill. He's not the biggest middle going around in the game. But wow, watching him just exploding last week out in the edge, it's hard to think that maybe that's not his best position, and that we could probably do better. We could probably do better by placing someone else in the middle. I think we'll see some ducks and drakes this week. I would love to see Jack move back to the edge, because what we saw last week really, he was just about best on ground, depending on who you are. So it was something special to see.
Yep. John, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, look, there is definitely the opportunity for ducks and drakes, for some shenanigans, for some pranking in terms of the team list here. You can kick him back out to the edge, slip Kelmer back to the bench, promote Luca Moretti, if that's how you want to do it that way. Obviously, you can also go Matt Dury or Ryan Madison to start there as well. I think I really like what I saw from Jack on the edge, but I am sort of offsetting that by the fact that it was Newcastle. And he's not going to get that brittle of an edge defence against him every week, although that right foot step looked mighty fine. So I think you've almost got to see what he can do against better opposition, because he was so good against Newcastle. And
yeah, the new Freddie Fittler.
Yeah, exactly. It was, as we said in the instant reaction, it was shades of Bradley Fittler with the explosiveness of that right foot step. So I would not be shocked if there is a pre-game configuration swap there, a little, rejigging of the forward pack. And like I said, you almost have to. You got to know. And I know that Ryles wants to play that small bore, high leg speed, agility through the middle sort of forward pack that is obviously offset by certain pieces like Junior, who tend to be the bigger anchors of the forward pack, because you do need big body still. But if Williams can be that sort of guy on the edge, we've seen guys like Liam Martin who have a similar physical profile be real dogs in the good way, obviously, in a similar capacity. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there is a little, at least an experimental period there in the game where he might get thrown out to the right edge.
Fellas, the other thing too, I'm actually really keen to see have our viewers got any questions or any thoughts on the team list for this week?
So just running through quickly, there was obviously some talk about Joash there. Scott Whitney saying, "Who's with me? Ola Kawatu should be kept in the Origin camp for the weekend." Agreed.
Yeah.
Laurie Dowie did us a little bit dirty. After all the talk of Tommy Tebojevic getting picked and Hamole Ola Kawatu getting picked, Hamole in the extended roster, right? But not actually part of the game they set up. I believe Kurt Mann is the 18th. Is Kurt Mann? Is that? Now I have to double check. I actually don't remember the. Let me have a quick gander here. That is the ladies' team. Where is the?
By the way, named in 17, I thought.
Where is the?
By the way, it's if he's proposing that Olakwatu, I'm seconding it. And maybe what we need to do is get a change to the rules that if you're named in the 20, you don't get to play for your club.
Yes, until it affects the Eels, in which case, yes, you got to.
Oh, then there's different rules come in. Yeah.
But in the meantime, what do we got here? Some fellows saying there's been a lot of smart comments in the chat. I don't know, Chris Ricketts. Can you back that up? Look, before we get the roster, Dave Oz did ask us, fellas, what do we think about Parapage's leaking the last-minute inclusions? Rather we keep that info to ourselves. That's more a question for you, Sixties, because you are the player, the individual on this panel that sort of sits on the information. And you've made it your business, haven't you, not to harm the Eels as your MO when it comes to the tip sheet and TCT, because if you wanted to, you could certainly have spilled the lollies every week for nearly or over a decade now.
Yeah, look, it's a position where, we've talked about it tonight because it's been a topic that's been raised, and if we don't talk about it, then it's like we put our head in the sand in regard to our opinion on, is it possible? Fellas, my stance has always been that if I'm welcomed at training and it's also a situation where, we get to speak with the coaches from time to time being there and, have some candid conversations. And I think with that, from my perspective, comes responsibility to keep any of those conversations to myself. And that's just how it is. So my position is my position alone. I don't have a take on what other people decide to do because they're not there at training, so they're not giving away something that they've seen. It's mail that's passed on to them. They have to make that call themselves about what they would talk about. I just can't. That's just how.
Like I said, that's always been your MO. And look, if people want to leak information they have, it's their prerogative. But like you said, 60s, you've always been team first, and that's how TCT always will be. And you can only control what you can control. So we're not going to sit here and tell people off for leaking stuff. That's just how sports works. Back to the roster talk though. Got people saying if Joash is to come in, they think Matt Dury be dropped. Dave Oz is suggesting Walker to 6 and Joash to the bench, Brown to 7. You've got what else we got here? Got someone, Marty Funkhauser tipping that he's got the news that Joash will debut. We'll hold you to that, Marty. What else do we have here? People like the idea of Walker to 13 to help pave the way for getting Joash into the team. Our good mate Ben Johnson, I think, mentioned he wanted to see Jermaine Hopgood into that front row rotation. We've spoken about that in recent podcasts, boys. Maybe simplifying the game for Jermaine and sort of taking out some of those decision-making processes where he sort of, I don't know what it is, whether he's injured or just not processing, but he just seems to be a little bit slow in making those calls to distribute the ball, and the opposition teams have been cutting down his space and making some or forcing some errors. There is a signing thing we'll talk about there from Paul McMullen, Sixties. So I'll throw that to you shortly. But that looks like the by and large the talk about the roster. And then also people correcting me about Kurt Mann, who is the Queensland 18th man. Yeah, as I said that, I was thinking that doesn't sound right. And it's Campbell Graham or Stefano who will be the reserve for New South Wales.
Okay, so we'll come back to that other question shortly. I just wanted to mention a few things. Last week we got wins across all three grades, which was a good bounce back from losses in all three grades the week before, which left us quite deflated.
The yo-yo football diet.
Yeah, absolutely. What we do need to mention, you've run through the team list for Flegg. The Flegg are playing this week at Kellyville. So you've got New South Wales Cup and first grade on at Combank. The Flegg playing at Kellyville on Saturday. I believe it's a 1 o'clock kickoff, John, that they're playing there. So that gives supporters an opportunity to come up, check out the new facilities there up at Kellyville, sit in the grandstand there, watch the game. You're going to see how close you are to the game in that stand there. It's you'll be sitting in comfort. I would imagine, I'm imagining they'll have the kitchen open there.
And that was one of the questions from Chat 60s was, when is the COE officially open? Again, we don't have a date, but functionally, as you can see, it's ready. They're playing games out of it. So if you have a chance to get down there, 1 o'clock PM on Saturday, get out there. The Flegg unofficially were part of the original coronation process for the opening, where they played with the Fiola and Gale. This is their second visit there, and they won on the day on that initial opener, and a chance to stay undefeated this week.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're encouraging people to go and catch the game there on Saturday. And why not? The Eels, the other grades are played on the Friday. This is make a little bit of an afternoon of it. When I say make an afternoon of it, you're only taking out the game, one game, time for one game.
80 minutes of footy, and a chance to, like I said, sample the new kitchen. See, I mean, it's a great vantage point. It's nice and vertical, close to the sideline. As good as you're going to get in terms of the Jersey Flegg. We've been griping about the venues that the Flegg have played at this year. No complaints about Kellyville. That's going to be some of the best you're going to get for the under-21s.
Yeah, so looking forward to that. We'll obviously be there. Apart from that, we do want to give a shout out to all of the Eels representatives in the City Country games on the weekend, because there was a host of our junior rep players that were involved. It was the under 16s and under 18s in the boys.
Correct.
It was under 17s and under 19s in the girls. So that aligned more with the ages for the Lisa Fiola and the Tasha Gale Cup, the girls. The boys, it's sort of like a midway cutoff for that. So the 19-year-olds in the SG ball ineligible.
Yeah, it's interesting that CBC has not realigned with the male pathways. I'm not really sure why, but it is what it is.
I as I said, it was a huge representation, especially in the girls. And in the Lisa Fiola, there were 9 girls from the Eels selected in that team, and there was I think it was like 4 or 5 that were selected in the under 19s team. But we do have to give a shout out to Georgia Wanzi, who was a centre for the Eels in the Lisa Fiola Cup. She played on the wing in this and got herself 4 tries in that particular game.
A bit of light work in a rep game, exactly. Not bad.
Yeah. So she did particularly well there. But all of the players that were representing City, and there was one representing country, which was Tess McWilliams in the under 19 girls team, and I believe she was the captain of the country team as well. But all not only represented themselves quite well, but also were fine representatives of the Parramatta club. And you just look at that and you go, well, there's quite a future there. And it also emphasised how many imports were in that Bulldogs team, because the Bulldogs were the dominant team throughout the Lisa Fiola, even though the Eels dispensed of them in the grand final qualifier. It was a massive upset in the context of the entire season and what had transpired in the season. But the Bulldogs barely got a single player in that City team. Why? They're from New Zealand. And it's as simple as that. Now, I don't know what's going to happen to the Bulldogs when New Zealand put in their own teams in those girls' competitions. Be interesting to see what ends up happening there. Anyway, fellas, I wanted to give that little bit of acknowledgement there. John, I think we're just about time for your musical interlude. Oh no, we'll go to that question that you had for me.
Yeah, we'll quickly smash through a few questions from chat. I see that Chris and Jaden have talked about Lachlan Galvin or have questions about Lachlan Galvin. Sixties, we're going to touch on that on the other side of the intermission music, so stay tuned for that, guys. We've got a question for me by Chris as well. What is my milkshake choice of or flavour of choice? Probably a caramel milkshake if I had to pick one off the top of my head, fellas.
That's not alluding to the Eurovision, is it?
No, not a Eurovision man. So no cheeky references there. Just a nice caramel milkshake. Chris, what's your milkshake of choice?
Me, pretty boring. Probably vanilla malt.
Vanilla malt. That's honestly solid. That's one of those ones that, as you get older, I think it ages better too. Like as a kid, you probably go for like the chalky or strawberry milkshake, but as you get older, it's kind of like, I suppose, alcohol and beer and wine. You sort of just get a more matured like sense of taste. Quickly, the one I want to mention, Sixties, is the chatter about Josiah Pahalu. Brent Reid was on a podcast this week, and he's linked Parramatta Eels to the young Gold Coast forward, who was originally slated to be a Canterbury Bulldog earlier this year, but they went and signed Leo Thompson, obviously, and sort of the chatter there has not gone away, but it has quietened down. He's a young middle forward. I think he's mid-180s, good size, good athleticism. I don't know if you've heard anything, Sixties, but certainly middle forwards is a position of need, given all the players that we've either let go or have been spoken about maybe releasing in the coming weeks and months.
Look, I'd be paying attention to some of the players that where there's mail that comes out from journos in this instance. Now, why? I mean, we normally look at that and go, well, there's a bit of clickbait there. However, what we've seen recently with the Eels recruitment is that we've picked up players who weren't available. Like they weren't on the list of the open market of players. They've sort of fallen out of the tree, as it were, where we weren't expecting that there would be something there. And I suspect that, and it's not just the Eels that this is happening with either. It's like the player market has completely changed, where recruitment is unexpected. You know, you might have your eye on players that are coming off contract, but I think there's as much attention now being focused on clubs who might be under salary cap pressure and monitoring those clubs, like all of a sudden building a wish list of players at salary cap troubled clubs and seeing if something shakes loose with those players. So it doesn't surprise me with the Titans. And I think there's as many issues there around Des as there are with anything.
I saw an article today about them moving to try and ice some of those clauses to remove the instability surrounding their season. Just an absolute mess. Like you said, Sixties, we've got the Broncos who have been linked to some salary cap distress trying to keep Selwyn Cobbo and Adam Reynolds. Yep. You've got, obviously, you mentioned the Titans.
There's some forwards there.
There's some handy forwards of both those clubs that the Eels would certainly be monitoring. And we mentioned last podcast, there was a tip coming out, not just to us, but I saw it on the internet in general, about Big T, Tino Fa'asuamaleaui, and maybe his ability to get out of a contract at the Titans. A
little bit of a history there with Jason Ryles.
Exactly. Likewise, you've got Payne Haas, who was pretty much open for negotiations in November, I believe. And like you said, if there is volatility at either of those clubs, a big hit list there for the Parramatta Eels. So Pahalu would be a great foil to some of those higher profile signings, I'd say. And look, every signing that isn't like an established star is a lottery ticket. So Pahalu would be a good young player that maybe Ryles sees he could develop. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if we end up signing him because there will be competition for his signature. Moving on, I see Chris has already answered this one, but Sixties, did you know that's a game-worn Peter Wynn 1983 jersey that Ricketts is sporting this week? So a nice bit of gear there. Matty was in chat asking him about that. Good to see Matty in chat. And speaking of chatters, a couple of first-time chatters there. So some shout-outs. I mentioned Marty Funkhauser. Said it's his first time in chat, and he was responding to, where have they gone? They're up here. No? Yes? Yeah, Shane Fraser, who actually asked the question about the Centre of Excellence. Shane's been a long-time listener, first-time chatter. So thank you for dropping by, guys. Greatly appreciated.
And I have to ask Chris too, what's the story then with the cap? Has it got a special story, or you just, you're styling and profiling?
Yeah, well, that's one way to phrase it. But yeah, there's no special story about this one other than I think it's probably my oldest Parramatta hat, and there's a lot of work being done at the back by the snap band. So I think it's when I first got it, my head wasn't this huge melon-shaped size that it is today. So, but happy to get a chance to wear it on the big screen.
I mean, Jaden mentioned it in chat, you're a one-eyed Parramatta Eels media pundit, so clearly the ego's just swelling as you get more and more powerful with your media prowess, mate. And
well, if they're on,
Jaden's chimed in saying Alan Jones gave it to you, so
I can't confirm or deny that, but what a coach Alan Jones was.
Yeah, pretty successful for the. And then a correction from another Chris in chat. Oh, not a correction, but an update. He pointed out that there were successful coaches for the Eels in those City vs Country games. Yes, well done, mate. That's a fair point. Mitch Lewis and I believe Ryan Walker were involved on both those. And there might have been an assistant coach in there as well that I'm missing.
Yes. So we had I've got our goal kicking winger.
Oh yes, Alicia Bell. Good shout.
Alicia Bell. My apologies, Alicia, and a family who are fans of the tip sheet and the Cumberland throw. But yes, so Alicia Bell, who was assistant coach of the Lisa Fiola team, she was also assistant coach of the City under-17s girls as well. So she's doing a fine job there. She's still playing, and I'm assuming will be part of the Eels setup in the Harvey Norman team to start off with this season. But yeah, so she was last year. She made a Harvey Norman debut. A fine goal kicker. Anyone that's seen Alicia kick,
cannon of a boot. Yeah, sharpshooter of great distance.
Like she was in the Tasha Gale nailing sideline conversions and like in incredible situations and conditions, windy days, the match on the line, having to kick the conversion after full time, all those sorts of circumstances. So well done to Alicia. My apologies for the mental blank there for a moment. That's a factor of my age more than anything else. So I'm sure I can be excused there.
All righty.
Any other questions there, John?
No, we've got some stuff we'll talk about post intermission. So let's get back on track. And bearing in mind, I do want to talk about some Origin news that's not broken in terms of like drama or anything like that, but a very interesting choice by Laurie Daly to bring players into camp. We'll talk about that on the other side of the music. And I figured this week, fellas, I had a couple of options. I was almost going to play Original Prankster by of course, the Offspring classic rock song there.
I was hanging for it, mate.
Yeah, but I decided instead, we mentioned how busy it's going to be, the chaos that looms ahead, the Eels playing 3 arch rival games in a row, starting obviously this week with the Seagulls, and I believe it's the Panthers and then the Bulldogs before the bye. We've got State of Origin. It's just chaos. So I want to slow things down, chill things out, and go back to sort of our roots of a little bit of jazz music. And this is Mercury by Hyperdrive Sound. So nice and chill as we head into our intermission. nice bit of lo-fi jazz there as we wind down before we wind up.
Well, John, if you had gone with original prankster, I'd already used it on the reel and on the story on the Instagram posts. So
Can't rehash it that many times. So
can't. I understand. And nice, laid back sort of groove there for that bit of music today, mate. So well done. Okay, so we move on. Galvin. Now we're expecting that there might be some news on Lockie Galvin today, because I believe there was a board meeting yesterday.
The report was the board met on Monday, yes.
So nothing's actually come out about that whatsoever. Now, how do you take that? Do you take it that, when it's when nothing's come out, is that a good sign for Tigers supporters? Is it that lessons have been learned from what's transpired earlier? Are we expecting him to come onto the market, or to be released, I should say, earlier than expected? Like, is he going to be a mid-season release or end of season? What do you think, Chris?
I think, like anything else with that club, the no news piece is probably an indication that there's a lack of alignment at board level, would be my guess. If they were aligned one way or another, you probably would have heard something pretty quickly after the board meeting. So I suspect that there's still a bit of discussion happening there. I can't see a world where he's playing for the Tigers next year, personally. I just, the way everything has unfolded over the past couple of months, and some of the taking the temperature in the room within that club, maybe to save face, they try and get him through the rest of this season. He's not playing his best footy, it's fair to say. Probably similar to when Dillbags was going through that at the start of the year. He wasn't playing his best footy either. For a young player, it definitely takes a toll to have all this contract discussion. I think we're seeing the impact of that on Lockie. I'm guessing that there's just a lot of disagreement internally at the Tigers, would be my suspicion.
John, it's interesting that Chris just raised a comparison with Dylan Brown, because Dylan Brown openly said in an interview before the game last Friday that his head was a mess.
Yeah, good chat with
in
Sean
those
Johnson.
opening rounds after the decision had been made, and that really did align with what we were saying about, he probably couldn't reconcile the fact that he'd made the decision that he had, and it was probably a scenario. This is what I believed anyway, that he made a decision he didn't expect to make. He still wasn't comfortable with that decision. His football was indicative of someone who was confused and just, not happy in himself. Obviously he's playing better since Mitch Moses has come back, but he'd started to find a bit of his groove just before Moses came back anyway. I thought he was playing better football, and since Moses come back, he's continued to get better. I think we will see a better version of Dylan this week in the game, even without Moses there. That's just as an aside. But, John, I'll put this to you in terms of Galvin and the Tigers. The sooner that's sorted, even if he's going to stay there for the rest of the year, I think if they sort out where his destination is sooner rather than later, they'll get the better football out of him between now and the end of the year, much like as eventually happened with Dylan Brown. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's common sense. But like Chris spoke to, the lack of alignment maybe at the executive level, the discord that we've seen between the team, I don't know how the Tigers can iron that out. So when it comes to Galvin, yeah, I think you're right, Ricketts. It's just untenable. Like, there's been genuine vitriol at the start. I know it's faded into the background a little bit, but yeah, you could get good football out of Lachlan Galvin this year if you supported him correctly and built that partnership between him and Luai in a more healthy relationship. But yeah, I saw which journo was it? Was it Brent Reed? Is it Brent Reed again? Yeah, I believe it was Brent Reed. Let me just check this. He was on Triple M, so that would be.
Brent Reed's really locked in with Isaac Moses. I mean, it's pretty widely known that he can be a bit of a mouthpiece for Isaac.
And look, that's been part of the proxy war that's been fought on NRL 360 and other avenues as well, between journos that I've seen some be firmly in the middle and sort of try and call a spade, you know, obviously taking legitimate shots at the Isaac Moses camp, but also the Tigers. You're seeing a lot of pro PR for the Tigers, and also, like you said, Brent Reed pretty clearly getting the inside take from the Moses camp. Reed is reporting that the situation's untenable after what happened on the last result, where the fan base were very vocally giving it to Galvin for missing that try, where the ball got prized loose over the line. He reckons that it's going to be he's not ruling out him leaving before June 30. So,
well, interesting. I haven't had anything, any mail that I've been receiving. You know that I was getting a lot of mail even before anything was happening with Galvin and the Tigers. I was getting a lot of messaging that Galvin will be an Eel in 2026. I haven't had anything at all in the last couple of weeks, so just been it's been all quiet on the Western Front, literally the Western Front.
There is a question from our good mate Ben Johnson, who has a pertinent, question about in the eventuality that Galvin does sign with the Eels, what are you comfortable with paying him in terms of his salary?
I think Galvin probably sits comfortably around the 700,000-800,000, and I think that's probably what the Eels would have to pay. I think that and the thing is that is also getting him a lot cheaper than Dylan Brown, but I'm sure there will be factors thrown into it, not options, but there might be some triggers in the contract in terms of
if he goes on to play representative football or ratcheting clauses for hitting KPIs in terms of being a top playmaker in the game. It's just part and parcel of being a 6, 7, or 1 these days, is that you have that sort of leverage in your contracts. Look, I think chat's in agreement. Some people going a little bit lower, down to 600. I think maybe you could get 600 for the first year or two if you structure a contract in a certain way. But I think the APY probably works out to be in that 700-800 range. Just he's got a good market, talented player. I think Moses of the Isaac variety was in the press ahead of the saga saying that 800 was sort of his benchmark. And the cap is going to go up. You've already seen Newcastle hedge strongly on that effect with their offer they gave to Dylan Brown. And there is a strong chance that even Dylan's contract ages reasonably well if the expansion money comes in and the cap goes up to, it's at 11.4, 11.5, I think now. So if it goes up to 12.5 to 13 million, you're going to see what always happens is that the key players' salaries scale, everyone else sort of gets left behind. Like the minimum wage might get raised a little bit, but it's a microcosm of capitalism, isn't it? The rich get richer. And players like Dylan Brown, you can question about where he can be the primary playmaker, but I think the contract won't look as bad. So, if you can get Galvin in that range, I'd be pretty comfortable.
Yeah, look, and the other thing is too, you talked about the salary cap. It's also what's going to happen with the player market over the next, you've got the two teams coming in over the next couple of, in 27, 28. So that player market, I would imagine, is going to start to go crazy at the end of this year. When players who are off contract are able to talk. I think there'll be clubs making their move now.
Yep.
Trying to get players locked in a way that keeps them, especially the players that they mark down as being a big part of the future. They want to get them locked down so they're not grabbed by one of these two new franchises or be impacted by the bidding war that will come in
And it's
with these new franchises.
It's exciting times, guys, because expansion, the sort of the basic correlation for expansion means weakness of the playing pool, right? Because there's more clubs, less players to share around because the playing pool doesn't expand, but you've got to, roster another 40 players per club, essentially, when you factor in the top 30 plus the development players, plus any provisions they would have for expanded rosters to help them get off the ground. And you've got Western Australia and PNG doing that. But weaknesses, weakness or perceived weakness, means opportunity too. And if the Eels can get this right, if Jason Ryles can lock up his roster, can get the choice picks from those juniors, the flag, the ball, the New South Wales Cup, the Eels could really climb and be ascendant at a time where the competition is being pulled apart and made weaker.
Yeah, absolutely. Fellas, let's move on. Choice of tries this last weekend. Whether you're talking about
say his name.
Noah Kanatawazi.
Nawanga Tawazi, I've heard it called. Obviously we haven't called him Mark.
Nawanga Tawazi.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That sounds good. I'll let you say the name anytime soon.
Well, he showed why he's a wallaby, right? With that little hop.
Oh, insane.
That's
but we got that try. We got the try by Coates, which was crazy. And then we've got the try by Little, that 80-odd metre effort with the goose step at the end of it. Which was the best try out of those three and why? And I reckon Chris might have some thoughts on this because I know which one I think you rate as special after a couple of messages that you sent.
Look, I haven't seen one like the Nawanga Nitawazi try before, so that was incredible. But anytime a hooker picks it up, scoots 80, and then burns the 5'8" with a huge goosey about 10 metres from the line, I mean, whether that's the best or not, I certainly enjoyed that the most.
I mean,
particularly the fact that it was Ezra Mam as well. Ezra, you can...
Appy did the same to Latrell Mitchell. That was pretty embarrassing for Trell as well. Just getting, I don't even know what he was doing. Getting sold on the fake kick and then just running to the right. But yeah, look, I've seen guys climb the heavens, and not to do with the service to Xavier Coates, who did an incredible job doing exactly that. But what Nawanga Tawazi, or however you pronounce it, is, I think I'm missing an E in there, but it was like what Kristen Inu did way back in the day with the grubber kick where he went out the field of touch, except like that multiplied by 3. Staying in the field of touch is a little hop adjustment into a kick, clutching the ball from outside the field of play and bringing it in to put it down. Like, wow. He is...
I mean, Jono, Mitch Moses climbed higher than David Coates.
Exactly.
It wasn't even the best kick catch.
It wasn't even the best kick catch try of the day, of the round. So come on, Xavier. I think you're so cool going 3.5 meters up in the air. Mitchell Moses got you covered easy, mate. And we'll see that in State of Origin too. But yeah, Mark's been a great pickup for the Roosters, geez. I know he's had his, learning moments of rugby league and the errors here and there, but you can see the quality. And he's going to be a mainstay for them for a long time. And I don't know what his origin eligibility is, but I'll tell you what, if he's a Blue or even a Queenslander, he could come in the calculation sooner rather than later.
There's talk about him being the Rookie of the Year. Now, we know that in the women's game last year that Rory Owen wasn't eligible for that because she'd come from rugby union. But I believe that he will be eligible.
I'm not sure about that one, mate. If that's true, that feels like look, I can understand the thing is that Rory Owen wasn't even like a high profile rugby union recruit.
No.
Whereas Mark has got the highest tier of representation for Australia coming across. I could understand the rule as written for the NRLW, and it sucked that Rory missed out, especially given that she came from much smaller time union. But yeah, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I'd be frustrated if Mark was eligible for Rookie of the Year. And that's, again, not taking away from what he's doing this year. He's been awesome. He's been great to watch. But if you can't have a Rookie of the Year on the basis of a history in rugby union in the NRLW, then sure, you should apply to the NRL too.
Yep.
What I will say about those tries, first of all, with regard to Mark's one, I've never seen a try like it. I've never seen a kick put in like it. It was, to me, that's one for the all-time highlight reels in rugby league. The Xavier Coates one, it's a good thing that he got the ball down, because the bloke underneath him would have surely been meant to go to the bin if he hadn't have grounded it. We've seen that that's what happens when you get crushed underneath a flying catcher. You've clearly tried to tackle them in the air.
Yep.
And I'm sure that's what the fella was doing with his neck as Coates climbed up on top of his shoulders. He was bending the head over and trying to take him down. So clearly tackled in the air. So good thing he got the ball down. And as for Little, it actually reminded me, Chris, there was a try that Max Krilich scored for Manly against Parramatta at Brookvale Oval. I'm not sure what the year was, but you'll be disturbed to hear that the player that he kicked away from was Brett Kenny.
Oh, no.
And it was the same thing. Yep. Broke away into the clear. And I can't remember the circumstance of how he got the ball, whether it was an intercept or picked up a loose ball. But Kenny did the same as Mam, rounded him up pretty quickly, and then Krilich kicked out of the tackle from Brett Kenny and then went on to score the try. So I have actually seen it before. Maybe it wasn't quite 80 metres, but I think it was about 50 or 60 from memory. So, and here's the strange thing. Max Krilich is actually one of my favourite players who didn't play for Parramatta.
Oh.
He might be my all-time favourite non-Parramatta player.
We might be fighting words.
So,
and shaky ground here.
And look, on finally meeting him in person a few years back it was actually at a Brett Kenny fundraiser when Brett was struggling with cancer, and I went up to Maxi Krilich, nicknamed the Bomber, the bomb thrower, and I said to him, "I'm really happy to meet you. You know, even though I'm an Eels supporter, you're my favourite non-Eels player." And he was up at the bar getting a drink when I said that to him, and he goes, "Where you standing?" And I told him where I was, and he goes, "I'll come and find you. I'm just getting these drinks for some people." And true to his word, over he came and chatted for an extended period, probably asked me more questions about either myself or Parramatta than I was able to ask him. He was every bit the good bloke that I thought that he was before it. Like it was actually one of the highlights of my supporting life was meeting Max Krilich. So there you go, a Manly player.
Your persona non grata of Ben Johnson.
Manly player.
You've been put on block by Ben Johnson. So yes, the repercussions of barracking for the enemy there, mate.
Well, look, I'm just going to skip over the Bears for a moment. No, I know Chris has some very strong thoughts on the Bears, but I wanted to get into some Origin talk as well, because we're talking about other clubs, other players, all that sort of thing. First, we have to give a shout out to the women's Origin game last
the Origin
week.
Series, like it's just been.
Oh yeah, I thought, you know, maybe it's not possible for them to be as good as they were in game one. That it was such a high standard, and then they come out in the rain and deliver the sort of game that we saw. When you think they're playing these games where the clubs have barely started their pre-season, and all they've had is they've had to pick a squad based on last year's form.
Yeah.
Go into an Origin camp and prepare from there with no football behind them, just what they're doing in opposed sessions and training in camp, and you get the standard of football that we just saw, especially in the wet. It was astonishing rugby league, and it was, to an extent, it reminded me of the old-fashioned Origin. You know, there were moments when the women really fired up, like Kennedy, like she got them going as well, you know, and you could see how much she was loving that bit of spice that was added to the game. Fellas, anything you want to add as a comment about the women's Origin game?
It was shocking conditions, and they played good football. And we've said it so many times that the NRL and the NRLW, it really is bottled lightning here for the code. It is such a unique opportunity to seize a rapidly growing market and establish yourself as the premier professional sport in Australia for women. And then really, who knows how far I can go beyond that, because I look at the athletes we have in our game and they're as good as any going around. I know, like you talk about like track and field and whatnot, and there are specialists that are obviously special beyond that. But as a product, as teams, their growth rate, their ability to shift the ball, to play in and out of structure the way we see with the men, to be combative but not get bogged down in all the shitty metagame stuff that we've seen introduced into the NRL in terms of wrestling and all the tactics that are done to manipulate official interpretations and whatnot. It is such a good product right now. And State of Origin, much like it is the crown jewel for the men, it is now the crown jewel for the ladies. What do other codes in Australia have? The AFLW doesn't have anything like that. The Big Bash, the Women's Big Bash, is a great product, but it hasn't got a State of Origin. This is huge for the NRL.
Yeah, Chris?
Yeah. I absolutely love women's rugby league in general, and I think we saw in the Vegas weekend, Jono just talked about the extra professionalism in the game. We saw the difference between the Australian team and the English team that day. I think it was about a 90-4 result or something like that.
Yep.
And that was probably, the Lionesses are probably where Australian rugby league was maybe, 6 or 7 years ago. And just to see that delta now is pretty impressive. I love it. I can't get enough of watching the women's game. The one thing they do have to rectify is they need to try and line up the season with Origin so that you do have a bit of a form guide coming in.
And I think 80 minutes is just an eventuality too, like the 40-minute halves. I don't think it really...
Absolutely.
35 minutes just doesn't really, why? I don't really understand. Yes.
I mean, I think I look at Newcastle on the weekend when we played them in the NRL game. Their best halfback is playing in their women's team. Jesse Southwell would probably step into their NRL team and be an improvement on what they currently have.
If they had the Jesse Southwell for the NRL, Newcastle would be crowing. She played a fantastic series, and obviously there's still a dead rubber to play in front of her home crowd, actually. She'll be out at Newcastle. McDonald Jones there for the game 3. But yeah, the Origin game was excellent. Full credit to all the Blues, and full credit to the Cowboys, the Maroons as well, because that is a mighty Blues team they're versing right now.
Oh yeah.
As I said, John and I have long spoken about the women's rugby league in Australia. Well, women's rugby league, let's just leave it at women's rugby league, has the potential to be the most exciting women's sport in the world, and actually grab that market as being that. Now, the best teams are obviously in Australia now. The rest of the world that plays rugby league in the women's game have got a long way to go to catch up to players that invest so much time in their preparation. And we have to remember they're part-time players. You wonder where their game would go to if they were full-time players for a start. The decision, of course, has to be with the NRL, with how much financially do they continue to prop up the women's game. Now, I don't look at it as propping it up. I look at it as an investment in the product that's there, because
the WNBA is propped up by the NBA. That is an unfortunate product that can't stand on its own. The NRLW, the way it is, I mean, you look at the ratings. You mentioned that the State of Origin game, you're not going to always get the ratings for obviously State of Origin ratings for regular round club games, but it outrated the AFL. It was a top 4 clash between the Gold Coast and Hawthorn that it outrated. That that should not be slept on for TV negotiations and digital broadcast negotiations with DAZN or DAZN as the Yankees call it, DAZN or whatever it is. This should be big. Like they should be able to negotiate a broadcast deal in the next negotiations that incorporates expansion for the NRL, including time slots in Western Australia that are going to be helpful for broadcast in the same way they are for the Big Bash. A big part of their package with the broadcast networks is the ability to have the late night games. And then likewise, the ladies' product. You have literal weekend from Thursday and maybe even to Monday. I know with the Hovden Women's Premiership, they played on a Monday sometimes, but let's keep it to Sunday. But it is wall to wall, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, NRL and NRLW that no other code can offer. And that's huge for advertising, that's huge for broadcast, that's huge for just the game. And surely that can sell TV rights and broadcast rights and help fund, not prop up, but fund on its own merits, the expansion of the NRLW.
Yeah, and look, I'm going to say something, and I don't mean it to be disrespectful, but if you try to make a comparison between the NRLW and the AFLW, there isn't a comparison to be made. In comparison, the women's game in the AFLW is garbage. Like it is. I've watched games there where you just think, this surely isn't their showpiece. And I think it has a lot to do with the way that their game was instantly expanded, where they didn't really have the pathways functioning as they did, and they had to recruit from outside of the code. And look, to an extent, the rugby league was a bit like that with the junior representative, like when the Tasha Gale first started many years ago. We were seeing a really low standard of rugby league in that game because there were a lot of girls playing who perhaps hadn't played for a long time or maybe had never played the game before, and they were making a representative, a junior representative team. And those same girls, if they rocked up at a trial these days, like they couldn't. Well, I mean, they just couldn't, because they wouldn't be able to compete with the girls who are now coming through and playing on a weekly basis, girls rugby league from the age of 12, whereas there wasn't anything from them after the age of 12 before. So what the NRL has done well is they've got pathways sorted and they're getting stronger. They've got the expansion right. It really started off as almost like an exhibition series when it was only the 4 teams. And it wasn't really a premiership. It was just played in that final series, and it was
exhibition.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
It literally was exhibition rugby league. And now you've got 12 teams. You've got the talent to sustain 12 teams, and you're going to get a good standard of rugby league through the season. And as John said, those elite games, they should be really big negotiating points for the NRL when it comes to the broadcast deal, and by virtue of that, pump more money into the women's game. And rather than looking at it in like any of it going back into NRL coffers, that should every part of what they get for a women's Origin series should go back into the women's game, every part of it.
Yeah,
so
and everything in alignment now should be bringing in the franchises to eventually have parity with the NRL, because obviously you want to have, if there's 18 NRL teams or 20 NRL teams, you would like to have the counterparts on the female side of things. Bring them into a full-time profession that falls alongside. It doesn't have to be look. The reality is that the NRL is one of the biggest slogs for the athletes, and like it is the combination of explosive gladiatorial combat and the attrition that you don't see in many other codes. So maybe there can be some thoughts about not subjecting the women to the exact same schedule, but obviously expanding the competition. But yeah, getting them full-time athletes, expanding the salary cap to be commensurate with like what they're earning, what they're producing, and then bringing those clubs, the brands and franchises into parity has got to be the long-term focus. and they could run Australian professional sports on the women's side of things. Who's going to stand up to them right now? There
isn't.
Every premier, sort of a not round ball, but oblong or round ball, but footy based, whether it's soccer, rugby league, rugby union, AFL athlete, they're looking to the NRLW now, saying that's the place you want to be. So good times. Speaking of Origin boys, an update that I mentioned before the intermission, Laurie Daly doing Laurie Daly things, bringing in a couple of players into camp. This coming out tonight. One of which I've got no issues. Jacob Preston, Sixties. Back row for the Bulldogs, been on the rise in recent years. Obviously had a 5-game suspension, was it? I can't remember what I got bumped up to after failing to win that charge against a crusher. But he's been brought into camp. No issues there. He's absolutely a player that could feature with the Blues in Origin and not be considered an unreasonable pick. But the other one, I don't know about that. There's a few players I think that would have been ahead of the queue of Adam Dwyer. But Laurie Daly's brought him in the camp. And Adam, a good utility player, but I wouldn't say he's anywhere near State of Origin calibre.
No. And I think I don't really want to say anything more because I think he is a good club player.
He is. I like, and injuries haven't helped his plight, no doubt. But every club could use an Adam Dwyer, a guy that can cover 1 through to 6 in your back line. Pretty handy, and he does a good job there for the Tigers and has done for the Bunnies in the past as well. That seems like a bit of a stretch to pull him in the State of Origin camp.
Yeah. So look, just on Origin, Chris, the controversial selections or maybe omissions. So we've got May from the Tigers, and there was even talk about did Laurie Daly do the courtesy of calling him? Why do you need to call someone? He wasn't in the team last year, was he?
No, he wasn't. He wasn't. And this is, look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Terrell May's not having a great year because that would be just a blatant lie. But there was a lot of drama around his circumstances in which he departed the Roosters. And clearly behind the scenes, there might be something that clubs and selectors are more clued into than we are. But the reality is, people acting like the Blues got their asses kicked last year and were washed out by the Maroons and that this guy should be a walk-up start. They beat the Queenslanders last year. They are the reigning champions. They have a great forward pack. And he would not be the first talented and informed player to miss out on the State of Origin debut or selection in the history of his game by virtue of having a strong team, let alone crazy New South Wales selections. Is he unlucky to be overlooked? Yes. Is this a drama? I have no idea what we're talking about. Like, why are the media drumming this up? Why are fans getting their knickers in a knot? He is a talent. The reality is, Sixties, he's a talented player, has 1.5 years of production to his name between the Roosters and the Tigers. He's obviously having a great year for the Tigers. He is primarily a work rate forward that has some impact. To be picked in State of Origin as a work rate prop, you got to be special. And you got to be able to have impact. And they've got a work rate guy in Payne Haas who does that. They've got, impact guys in Spencer Leniu. The reality is that his role, it's not niche, but it's perhaps the most contentious selection to earn, to try and fight your way into for New South Wales. So is he unlucky? Yes. But is there something under the hood that we don't know as fans? Maybe, because all that drama about his exit from the Roosters, when you hear that many different reasons, it makes you wonder. There was the article that came out this week about him putting on 25 kilos in 2 months by eating fast food, and that has to be exaggerated. I don't know who leaked that. But look, it is what it is. It's not a drama. It's a good player in good form being unlucky.
Yep. Chris, what's your take?
I won't add too much. I'd just say the fact that we've spent 5 minutes talking about this shows why the media is pushing this.
They work these angles,
forward.
Exactly. It obviously works.
That's exactly why.
Yeah, he is unlucky. And if he continues to perform and injuries and suspension are there, he will get his way into the New South Wales team. But he hasn't ingratiated himself to the Origin setup with the way he responded. Telling his mate to bin the Origin jersey he bought because he got overlooked for game one. That's the sort of stuff that when you say New South Wales don't get Origin, that's the sort of thing that plays into that. Does he get Origin? I don't know. But, there's another rookie getting a chance here in Max King, which, again, I'm a little bit surprised by the King selection, same way I would have been a little bit surprised by the May selection in that workhorse forwards, but Laurie Dowie's gone for one workhorse forward, and it's the guy from the best team in the competition. It's like the glue guy in their pack. That's just how the cards have fallen for Terrell this year, or at least for game one.
He apparently caught the eye with some of those effort moments in games, which, for Daly equates to Origin type football, making effort on effort plays. So,
and it didn't help Terrell that he got absolutely pants by Melbourne the week before selection too. That's just how things line up sometimes.
No, look, I don't have any dramas with Terrell May not being selected. I don't have any dramas with Max King being selected. A shout out to the King family who we enjoyed a bit of banter with at the Leagues Club when we were there before the Bulldogs game. The other thing I just wanted to touch on briefly, because you said about Queensland not getting Queensland getting Origin, or this is the old take.
The trope, the classic trope,
Origin.
Exactly. Yeah, New South Wales don't understand it. Yeah.
Yep. I don't know if either of you two fellas caught the face-to-face with Benny Elias, but the face-to-face series and the interviews that are being done, and Vonnie Sampson's obviously like a favourite of ours, but there was one conducted with Benny Elias. Now, I'm not a huge Ben Elias fan, but he started talking about the Origin series where New South Wales finally won a series, and there was like the photo of Steve Mortimer is famous from that one. We had the Brett Kenny try at the end of it to seal the win. And Benny Elias started getting emotional. Like, you'd see the tears in his eyes and his voice was breaking, trying to talk about it. And I'm thinking, this is like...
Yeah, look, the New South Wales don't get State of Origin is a media-driven trope and narrative that helps sell storylines. Like, Queensland have had some great victories, and they've had some big underdog victories, which is what has really sparked that narrative. But like you said, saying that New South Wales players don't get Origin, that they don't have the same reverence for the cauldron that is that caliber of football is ridiculous. And like you said, I haven't seen it, but I'm not surprised to hear that Benny Elias was incredibly emotional about it, because that is a defining memory, isn't it? That is a core memory for him. And it would be every successful New South Wales team, every New South Wales team that has tasted heartbreak in that arena would have those same defining memories. It's just that it's an easier sell to the media to put the underdog Queenslanders who have less resources in terms of the population and the franchises available, even though the Broncos have always been on a pedestal as a franchise of franchises with the resources given to them. But the Queenslanders have done well historically as underdogs, and hence they get Origin. And it is a disservice to those New South Wales Blues who have bled for the jersey and who have, cobbled together incredible storylines and results of their own, win or lose.
Yeah, I must say that having watched it, I found myself getting emotional watching it. Like, you just couldn't help it, like seeing a player that passionate about, something that had happened so long ago. And I found it difficult. Like, first time I was trying to tell someone about it, I became emotional even describing it, but that's probably me getting pathetic in my old age more than anything else. Okay, now, I promised we'd talk about this. Perth. Chris, you've got a warning for people about membership. Is that right?
Yeah, so this one was in the Daily Mail about 4 or 5 days ago. It's actually written by a friend of mine, so I'll shout out Andrew Prentice, one of the writers there. And this article was just about a bit of confusion with the Perth Bears. Now, apparently what had happened was, now, for those who are unfamiliar with gay culture, a bear is a big, burly gay man. Just for everyone's peace of mind, I'm sure most of our very enlightened fans on the YouTube channel would know this already. So what was happening was that excited New South Wales, North Sydney Rugby League fans were reaching out to Bears Perth Supporters Club, trying to become part of it. And
oh my God, Jaden, that's a great comment. I'm sorry.
That prompted a Facebook post from Bears Perth Support Group. to say, look, we appreciate the interest, but we just want to be very clear that we are not related to the new rugby league team in any way. And anyway, I thought it was quite an interesting story and something that just a bit of a laugh for us all.
Comment of the day from Jaden. No confusion for me. I knew what I was signing up for.
Yeah, I was about to ask John whether there was comments from the gallery about
instant banter from the peanut gallery. That takes the whole basket of peanuts. Well done, Jaden. Comment of the night.
Very good, very good. So and look, on a serious note, there seems to be a lot of heat now around Meninga and Burgess being the coaching combination or the desired coaching combination for that club. Not sure that that's right for them. What do you think, John?
Yeah, look, it's obviously going the route of the figurehead coach, like trying to bring in the headlines and the selling power in terms of sponsors and player recruitment. The reality is that Mal, as successful as he has been in the representative arena, inherited the greatest Queensland State of Origin team of all time, and henceforth the greatest Australian team of all time, built on that same Queensland team with the choice elements of New South Wales coming into it. And I'm not going to take away from the success that he had. He was the coach, but you could have put the band of peanuts that are me, you, and Chris in charge of that team or those teams, and we would have had to have, even in our worst attempts to sabotage those teams, they would have been successful in spite of us. So I don't, and again, representative football, getting teams up for 3 to 4 or 5 games, depending if it's a World Cup or a State of Origin series, a completely different kettle of fish to the day-to-day, hour-to-hour, minute-to-minute micromanagement required of an NRL franchise, which, completely different scale of operations. So they want to go I'm saying they as if it's a fait accompli, but if they do go this route, I can't see it ending well. You are hanging your hat on Sam Burgess being able to step into that role very quickly, be able to take over all those NRL responsibilities and demands that come with not just being an NRL franchise, but the NRL franchise is going to have to travel like more flying hours than anyone else in the competition, because the New Zealand Warriors are closer to the Eastern Seaboard than the Perth Bears would be, or whatever the franchise is going to be called. Bears, Perth Bears, whatever it is. I don't know. And I'm not here trying to carry Brad Arthur's water and say that he's the best choice, but I will take BA, 8 days a week over those guys if you're trying to build a competitive franchise. And I don't know who else is like on the docket as a potential head coach, but if the option was down to Brad Arthur or the combination of Burgess and Meninga, then geez, why are you having the conversation? Unless you believe so wholeheartedly in the Sam Burgess, and maybe he is going to be that guy, but BA's carried the Eels through dark times into being a grand final competitor. And again, if it wasn't for a dynasty existing in the Penrith Panthers, he probably comes away with an NRL premiership as an Eel. And that's a pretty good set of credentials to have for building a franchise.
Yeah, not only the Penrith dynasty, but some awful officiating in the 22 in the 21 final series.
Yeah, exactly. Which was arguably the peak of the team at the peak of its powers that year. I think it's crazy talk to even be considering Meninga, but I don't know. They've gone for some splashy acquisitions. They've picked up a CEO who comes out of Channel 7, right? Out of Kerry Stokes' stable. And that's already caused some headlines and given Stokes' predilection for AFL. They're obviously trying to drum up hype and interest and drama and controversy, because that's what gets engagement from the fans. And I guess it's better to be interesting but shit, or shit but interesting, than just meh in terms of trying to get people interested or engaged in your franchise. So maybe they know better than me. But in terms of the coaches, I'm surprised it's going this angle, and I can't see it working out too well. Again, unless Burgess is that guy.
Well, Chris, I mean, you've already talked about the marketing ploy that they should get into by linking with Bears Perth as a way of selling tickets and memberships and that sort of thing. But what's your thought? Should they be going with the high-profile figurehead type coach or with a bloke that's used to the weekly grind of the NRL in terms of coaching, because there is a massive difference between that grind of week-to-week premiership coaching and what Meninga has done as a representative coach. And that's with full respect to Mal, because he did it all in his playing career and he's had great success as a representative coach. But yeah, it's a different kettle of fish to be a weekly NRL premiership coach.
I mean, complete lockstep with you guys. I would just look at a more recent example of something like this, where the Tigers had the plan for Tim Sheens to coach the side and Benji to be the sort of the understudy. And with all due respect to Mal, Tim Sheens had coached about 700 first grade games, was a 3-time premiership winning coach, I think it was, and a 4-time premiership winning coach, and had been coaching far more recently in clubland, albeit over in the UK. And that went horrendously.
Jason Demetrio under Wayne Bennett at South Sydney, very similar.
Yeah, same sort of thing. And Sam Burgess may well end up being a great first-grade coach, but he's pretty inexperienced. I see in the chat, Michael Formosa said that Mal would most likely bring in Justin Holbrook. I actually think that would be a better outcome than Sam Burgess. Holbrook's been there, done that. He's coached the Titans. He was a great coach over in the UK. If you want the guy to do the day-to-day, he could do that, and then they could have some sort of succession plan. But I hate it. I just think you get a proper coach, you get Brad Arthur or someone else in there, and you let them build that club up. And to Jono's point, BA did this for us in 2013, and then he did it in 2016 as well. The club was at rock bottom, and he showed that he has the ability to work with undervalued players, younger players, and build a club up. Now, he couldn't quite get us over that final hurdle, but that's not a slight on Brad. I mean, up against that Penrith side, no one else could do it for the last 4 years either. So,
and the reality is that the Bears aren't in the business of winning a premiership in their inception years. Like, if it comes together, Las Vegas Golden Knight style, of course, that in terms of the NHL and hockey, a club coming in and being dominant from the get go, you don't see that anymore because the talent pool is already established in other clubs. Clubs in their inception and their establishment, they're incredibly vulnerable, and that's why you probably want someone like Brad Arthur, who has been through the worst the NRL can offer, as opposed to Mao, who he's been in the penthouse of the caviar and the Chardonnay and whatever, but that's represented football. Like he's been a talisman, a figurehead coach. So I don't know. Anyway,
okay, boys, pressing on because we do need to get closer towards the end, given the time that we've been taking so far. Just a quick injury report across the NRL. Tom Gilbert out for an extended time with a torn pec. Dylan Egan also gone for the season with an ACL from the Dragons there, very promising player. And you spoke about him before, Jacob Carraz out for an extended period with a calf injury. Tom Gilbert, he's probably the unlucky one out of all of those. It just seems to be injury after injury.
An absolute magnet for injury, and we've spoken about those kind of guys. Parramatta's own Hayes Dunster being right in there. But Gilbert, he was, a lock for representative football, wasn't he? And it's just been careening from major injury to major injury, and it's just awful.
And John, you just mentioned Hayes then. He hasn't been named in a team again this week. He's not in that injury list.
Yeah, right. Not a top 30 contracted player. Well, he is, isn't he?
He is. Hayes is a top 30 contract.
I was going to say, I in my head, I had he was back on a second-tier contract. He is top 30 contracted. So I don't know. The club, I don't think they're not officially obligated to report on all injuries, but you'd think they would for a top 30 player. So I'm not really sure what's going on there.
Yeah, so a little message from us to the club, can we get that updated as well? We don't like to dive into talking about injuries without using the club's official list there. So if they could clarify that for us, that would be great. There is no listing of Sean Lane as with players unavailable either, and I know that taking time away from the game, and if we're talking about like just an overall mental wellness scenario. I think it's fair to treat that as like an injury where you don't have control over that, and taking time away from the game. Maybe they can't, they can just list it as indefinite, but he's another player that's unavailable. And it would just be good to have the full list of players who aren't available there on the site. So, a little bit of a criticism, a little bit of a, can we please get this, updated there. And the only other thing, we were going to talk about the Roosters not having a bye during Origin, but we don't care. The Eels went through that in the past.
No one gave a shit about us.
That's just bad. We don't give it.
And, like I said to you in our earlier phone call this afternoon, 60s, you don't want to be the guy that pulls the ladder up after getting out of the bucket, and dealing with all the shit before. But no one gave a shit about Parramatta having to deal with multiple years of awful draws, including no buys during State of Origin. And it's the Roosters. Suck shit. Deal with it.
Yeah.
Yep. You're a doctor. Deal with it, as Hot Fuzz would have you quote.
Okay, so, John, time to dive back into the gallery there. Any other questions or comments that we want to mention?
Yeah, as expected, things are a little bit quieter on the non-Parramatta side of things, but we do have a question or two. Let me make sure I've got this here. Ben Johnson was cheering me on for popping off about the Terrell May selection rant or non-selection rant. He also had a good little flutter in the New South Wales victory, State of Origin 2 for the ladies. Apparently, Sportsbet were offering $8 Olivia Koenig anytime try scorer. He had a great weekend of feasting and drinking, apparently, on the back of that. Well done, mate. What do we got?
I'll have to get his tips for me in the future, Maybe he can do the tips on the...
He can have a punter's tip, a guest punter's tip, for goals preview, where you usually step in. Good mate Michael Formosa has an NRL question. Blake Wilson recently came out and said he wants to re-sign with the Bulldogs or the Dogs. What a wasted career playing New South Wales Cup backup. He's good enough to be in first grade every week. Yeah, I'm not really sure what's going on there. Parramatta Eels had chased Blake Wilson back-to-back years, 60s, been linked strongly to him under Brad Arthur and also Jason Ryles, I believe. And they wanted him to be part of that rebuild or even just, continue to build under BA in an alternate timeline. But he's chosen to stay loyal to the Bulldogs, and he is a man that does not fit into their first-choice backline or even their first-drop backline. He's been, he's gotten some caps this year, but stuck in Reggie's, and he's a talented player that can play fullback, wing, and centre. What's going on there? Why the blind loyalty to Canterbury?
Maybe there's a quota limit on how many former Bulldogs players we can sign in a certain time period.
We had plenty of them this offseason, we have, I got to hold Ben Johnson to this. Where is it? Because chat was talking about Tino and we were mentioning Pahalu and then Tino. Ben Johnson, if Tino comes to Para, I'll be buying the home tattoo gun for grand final day. So put that one in a little black book. If the Eels do pull off that mega coup out of the Gold Coast, Ben Johnson owes us a tattoo gun.
Let's just say Fletch is going to get tattooed up as a result of that.
Inked up, yes. Again, Michael, with a discussion about back rowers on the back of the Tino and Pahalu talk. Do we really want Kai Pearce-Paul? I wasn't impressed by him. And then discussions about Kai Pearce's value. He is on 750 right now as his reported figure. His camp and Barry Toohey, who was the mouthpiece for Newcastle in the media, have been very vocal about his position and his unhappiness or perceived unhappiness in the New South Wales Newcastle setup. So there's some stuff going on under the hood there. How much is Kai Pearce-Paul worth, guys? He is a phenomenal athlete, near 2 meters tall, got good mobility and good strength, but we haven't seen him maximising that frame.
Yeah, I can't comment on that because I don't think we've seen. I think you'd be recruiting on the basis of what he should be rather than what he is.
Oh yeah, it's punt on potential, absolutely. And the fact that he's getting 750 right now, he'd obviously be wanting that or more. But realistically, if you are signing Kai Pearce-Paul, and I know that I see it in chat too, that the speculation that part of the reason why Galvin might be released is that the Tigers feel like they're in the box seat to sign KPP. But if the Eels were to pick up KPP or look at KPP, God, that's KPP, all the KPIs for KPP. What would be his market? 500, 450? Realistically, he's a guy that is all promise and potential, but no production right now.
Yeah, I'll throw that to Chris. I don't think I could put a figure on it myself. Chris, what do you think?
Look, I mean, it would be an upgrade on what we currently have, but you wouldn't want to overpay. Put it that way.
Yeah, John.
Yeah. Look, I wouldn't be paying over 500, and that's a huge downgrade on his salary based on what he's at Newcastle. And I think the Tigers would be well in the splash. I don't know how much cap space they've got available though. They've been lavish spenders and picked up some quality free agents, but how much more can they stretch that cap? I don't know. Moving on, Jaden Walter says that Quinton Newton is doing a Reddit AMA, which is an Ask Me Anything, where you go online, Craig, and let people ask you questions and then respond to them at a later date based on sort of curated questions, I guess. He's going to ask him what's going on with Sean. So give us a feedback on that next live stream, Jaden. Greatly appreciated. We got some fun discourse with the Bears in terms of the Perth Bears and Bears Perth. And then some sort of feedback on what they can do with games at Gosford and whatnot. Jaden says Manly versus Bears at Gosford. That does make sense. I like that one. Manly have obviously got a sort of home away from home at Gosford, and the Bears have ties to that area as well. And then take someone small like the Titans to North Sydney Oval for the sort of return game there. Common sense. And then I think someone else came in with some cheeky banter there. I missed it. Ben Johnson, surely the Bears play Manly in Pride round. Please. Please. I need that. And then Ben is also disappointed that Chris has not been smoking a pipe while wearing that hat. And then he also agrees with you, Craig. He thinks it would be a great step to have mental health listed on the injury report. Yeah, don't need to shy away from mental health. There is nothing wrong with having to step away from the game because of mental health. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be some idiots and dickheads on Facebook and social media that will pile on to him about it, because I've seen people pile on to professional athletes about nothing. But the reality is that if you're going to make it acceptable and make people embrace it, then start treating it normally. Put it on the injury report. So common sense there. Chris Fairburn, so he's got two questions. So let's start with the peanut gallery one. Says that we should ask Rico to show you a few of his 97 tattoos.
You guys have seen it. You've seen the Parramatta one, so that's old news.
I don't know if there's hidden tattoos that we haven't seen, but we've certainly seen the Parramatta relevant ones. He also asked us for our predictions for State of Origin. We're going to do that this podcast. We're going to do that for the following news podcast, Sixties. You want to wait a week?
Oh, look, I'll give a quick tip now. New South Wales by 14.
Ooh, I like that. Chris, what do you got?
Moses man of the match. New South Wales 22, Queensland 12.
I'm prone to these sort of predictions. I think the reality is it's probably going to be close. I think that the Queenslanders are smarting after what happened to them last year. So if New South Wales are to win, I would say 8 points, but I'm going to go for the big win. New South Wales 36 to Queensland 12.
Whoa!
Yeah,
a 24-point margin.
24-point win. Exactly.
Here we go.
Let's.
I tell you what, you want to get on.
And Mitchell Moses. Mitchell Moses will
that.
outplay Nathan Cleary, but Nathan Cleary will get man of the match.
Okay, so you're going for a bit of controversy to come out of that.
Yeah, and not that Nathan will play poorly, but I think that the media are desperate to coronate Nathan and give him his moment in the one arena that he hasn't conquered, where he's been outplayed by Mitchell Moses and Jerome Luai. So I think Jaden says Adam Dewey man the match.
Trent Hodgkinson as well.
And yes, and Trent Hodgkinson, exactly. And
Trent Hodgkinson is better than Nathan Cleary at that level.
Yep. Jaden says Adam Dewey man the match, Adam Dewey hat trick. Yes, I like that one. Last couple of questions before we sign off, guys, because we're closing at 12.
I'm going to make a comment on 40's behalf. I'm not going to make it on my own behalf because I know what the outcome would probably be. But if Adam Dewey ever ends up being a man of the match in an Origin game,
it's Twilight
40 will get an Adam Dewey tattoo.
Oof.
There you go.
Okay,
I'm making the statement on 40's behalf.
If chat will sponsor the tattoo, I'll get it. Of Adam Dewey, man the match. I'll put the date and a little caricature of his head.
That's it.
Last couple of questions. Ben says this has been more entertaining than the Sonny Bill Williams and Paul Gallen press conference. Thank you, Ben. That is a very high bar to get through. Chris Hill, what's the target list of Parramatta going forward in recruitment? I mean, we sort of mentioned this in so many words, boys, but give me, off the top of your head, top 3 free agents or players that are contracted that you think you can get that are your key targets.
Okay, so let's go based on media reports of unhappy players or, players that could shake out of current contracts. Number 1 is Tino from the Titans.
You got to aim for the stars. Yeah, exactly.
He would be a game changer, an absolute game changer. Then you'd be talking about Ricky from the
Jordan
Broncos.
Ricky from the Broncos, back rower. Yep, 25 years old.
Yep. Then maybe someone from the Storm like Jack Howard. So that'd be the 3 that I'd nominate as being, if something shakes out from those clubs that are most likely under some sort of pressure for various reasons to release players, they'd be the major targets. And I think Tino he'd be a game changer for the club. Like,
no doubt. Yeah.
It'd take the pack to another level. You'd ideally want, if I'm Parramatta, I want another middle, I want another edge player, and because you know how I feel about not wasting the Moses years, and we can't be on a 3 or 4 year plan, because then that's 3 or 4 years of the best years of Mitch Moses. It has to be, let's hit the player market and hit the player market hard. You'd have to assume there will be a war chest available at the end of this year.
Gotta hope so, given what we've done in terms of cleaning up the roster.
Yep. So that's my thoughts, Chris.
All right, Chris, hit us with your 3.
I won't be greedy. I'll just take 2. Tino and Galvin. I'm good with that. I think we'll be in good shape then. And then,
I mean, if your recruitment was just Tino and Galvin, I'm pretty certain you could make that work. I'm pretty certain you could find an edge forward some way, somehow, internally, whether it's Sam Rani or a young guy like Josiah Funa-Ayuta, who you might accelerate the clock on. I know that's high. Chat's mentioning David Fafita. Certainly someone that the team should be doing due diligence on. Talent's phenomenal. He's still below his prime in terms of age to physical development. So there are question marks about his buy-in and his commitment. So you want to make sure that you know what you're getting. Absolutely. Michael Byrne talks about Tyson Frizzell maybe becoming available. If you want a tougher, older head, there's a spot for that in the team right now, maybe. So something to consider there. But yeah, I think that you look at Tyson for the right value, the right duration. And then Jaden's telling us that Billy Slater's clipping our predictions up as we speak. We're going to be bulletin board material for the Maroons in camp. Oh, God. Chat has been on fire today, guys. Some seriously top-tier comments. The Bears perf one was just killer as well. Ben
We're
Johnson,
just going to have an episode where the content is determined by the gallery.
Chat runs the podcast for an episode. Good Lord. We'll certainly have to open the floor to chat a little bit more in the future. But again, everyone watching has been absolutely on the top of their game. It's been a blast talking Parramatta and NRL news. Like we said, this is the calm before the storm. We've got a mega stretch of games coming up. As we said, 3 rivals, Manly, Penrith and Canterbury ahead of that bye, State of Origin sandwiched between them, with the Eels obviously impacted with Moses and Zach in that New South Wales Blues, not Sky Blues lineup. And we're going to cover all the fallout and all the coverage of those rep games and Parramatta games in great detail, as we always do. But yeah, that's another episode, 60s. You mentioned we've got some stuff we're doing with Talking Power as well. It's all on the docket on the horizon. So I'm going to pass it over to you for the final word to the sponsors and, as always, your sign-off.
Yeah, as John just said, a thank you to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, and, of course, Paraleagues, the home of the Eels, where you'll see us this Friday, 5:30 start. Stephen Edge, our special guest in Sturlo's in the club. It is the home of the Eels. Don't forget as well that there is the away game function for the Parramatta versus Penrith game, which is actually at Combank. But they've got that $30 event in Sturlo's. You get to see Jim Sarantinos talking with Eels legends there, get some food. It'd be a great day there before you go over to the game. And there's also that long lunch for the Eels Foundation. Get in touch with the Leagues Club about the event there. There's also a link on their social media, so you can hit the Leagues Club social media it's got the link for the event, and also with the Eels Foundation, you would have maybe received an email on that, Eels members. So again, that's going to be a great fundraiser and a great event with all those former Parramatta players and, of course, the current Eels coaching staff as well. That long lunch coming up. So, again, go and see the Eels website about that. Fellas, I think that's wrapped it all up. Thank you to all of our viewers. Thank you for you two fellas and your contributions. Don't forget Bears Perth for all of those people that are ready to sign up. All those people in the gallery that are pretty keen on it.
People with double memberships, yep.
Yeah, and as I always say, go you mighty Eels.